telescope in the world is going to turn to that location and start gathering data.
If there is a signal out there, we're getting closer and closer and closer to it.
Signal did indeed come from space.
Traveling throughout the cosmos are a variety of signals. Many of these signals are stars, quasars, and other celestial phenomena. Yet some of these signals, perhaps many of them, are extraterrestrial beings talking to each other, and perhaps talking to us.
This array of antennas, situated in the Cascade Mountains of Northern California, it's searching for evidence of intelligent extraterrestrials, aliens. Known as SETI, the Search for Extra-Terrestrial Intelligence. It is a daring experiment that could forever alter humanity's view of itself. An experiment to use modern technology to find other galactic inhabitants was first attempted by a soft-spoken astronomer named Frank Drake. In 1955, he entered Harvard as a radio astronomy grad student. After receiving his degree, the young Frank Drake joined the newly minted National Radio Astronomy Observatory in the soft hills of West Virginia. What followed was a 2-month observing program he christened Project Ozma after the fictional Princess Oz in Frank Baum's book. He wasn't studying natural processes, but looking for missions launched into space by an extraterrestrial society. He didn't find any alien signals, but Project Ozma had generated a tidal wave of interest. The meeting was held in the fall of 1961. As agenda for the meeting, he wrote a simple equation on a blackboard that would estimate the number of on-the-air societies that exist in our galaxy. This agenda, now known as the Drake equation, has been called the second most famous equation in science. Thus began the modern era of SETI that has sprouted into several signal searches in progress today. SETI is run on monies donated by a handful of interested individuals. SETI experiments have not yet found proof of extraterrestrials, but a small number of scientists are continuing the search with new observation programs and the development of new receiving equipment. By 2035, these experiments will have reconnoitered about 1 million planetary systems, an impressive sample. So it's conceivable that Drake's audacious experiment will soon pay off, that we will learn that humans are not the only intelligent species in the cosmos, that we share the universe
with others.
In 1966, Time magazine ran a cover story asking, "Is God dead?" Many have accepted the cultural narrative that God is obsolete, that as science progresses, there is less need for a God to explain the universe. More amazing is that the relatively recent case for his existence comes from a surprising place: science itself. The same year Time featured the now famous headline, the astronomer Carl Sagan announced that there were 2 important criteria for a planet to support life. 1, the right kind of star, and 2, a planet the right distance from that star. Given the roughly octillion, that is 1 followed by 27 zeros, planets in the universe, there should have been about septillion, 1 followed by 24 zeros, planets capable of supporting life. With such spectacular odds, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, a large, expensive collection of private and publicly funded projects launched in the 1960s, was sure to turn up something soon. Scientists listened with a vast radio telescopic network for signals that resembled coded intelligence and were not merely random. But as years passed, the silence from the rest of the universe was deafening. Congress defunded SETI in 1993, but the search continues with private funds. Researchers have discovered precisely bupkis. That is 0 followed by nothing. What happened? As our knowledge of the universe increased, it became clear that there were far more factors necessary for life than Sagan supposed. His 2 parameters grew to 10, then to 20, then to 50, and so the number of potentially life-supporting planets decreased accordingly. The number dropped to a few thousand planets and kept on plummeting. Even SETI proponents acknowledge the problem. Peter Schenkel wrote, in light of new findings and insights, we should quietly admit that the early estimates may no longer be tenable. As factors continue to be discovered, the number of possible planets hit 0 and kept going. In other words, the odds turned against any planet in the universe supporting life, including this one. Probability said that even we shouldn't be here. Today, there are more than 200 known parameters necessary for a planet to support life, every single one of which must be perfectly met or the whole thing falls apart. The odds against life in the universe are simply astonishing. Yet, here we are. Prepare for an alien encounter before it's too late.
Surely you can't be serious.
Stop calling me Shirley.
And the uptick of, this whole thing about prepare for alien encounters. And we need to write a protocol for when we make contact, So all of these things together brewing.
Everything you're hearing in the media and on the internet about the aliens and the alien agenda, this is all propaganda. All of it. And it is all pointing one direction. That is the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yep.
Every bit of it. The current narrative reads something like this. Aliens could get in touch tomorrow, and we must know what to say to them. Scientists are now meeting to prepare global policies for humanity's first contact with aliens, of course. The University of St. Andrews has joined forces with the UK SETI Research Network. That would be the UK chapter of the Scam for Extra-Terrestrial Intelligence. Did I slip? I think I slipped. To establish protocols and procedures if aliens are found. What to do if suddenly they show up, or if suddenly you wake up and the news tells you they've shown up, but you can't see them.
Yeah, they just want to control everything. Another invisible boogeyman.
This team warns that although there are measures in place for dealing with threats posed by asteroid impacts, for example, that the people of Earth do not have a unified plan in place should SETI's radio telescope arrays identify a signal from another intelligent life form. Or if you should wake up one day and the headlines would say, aliens are in New Mexico. They're shooting pool down at the bar. It probably won't read like that, but you know, a guy can hope. So let's explain. The SETI Post-Detection Hub is the team. They're there to determine what to do once detection is made, whether detection is a signal coming from far away in the universe or if it's aliens on the White House lawn. What do we do post-detection? So the Center for Exoplanet Science, also the Center for Global Law and Governance. And here's what they're actually aiming to do. They're setting out impact assessments and treaties designed to allow humanity to respond responsibly.
And sustainably.
Yeah. Dr. John Elliott, he is the coordinator at the hub. He said, will we ever get a message from ET? We don't really know. But we do know that we cannot afford to be ill-prepared, scientifically, socially, and politically rudderless for an event that could turn into reality as early as tomorrow.
So more emergency protocols. What could go wrong with that with these people?
So, given the risk of being annihilated by a possible civilization out there, if your worldview is evolution, and you believe the universe is 13 some billion years old, so what it is they say this week. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. You think it's possible that other civilizations exist, then they could be millions of years advanced beyond us. You wouldn't want to run into that one. The risk is not a good one.
The universe is 13.8 billion years old. 13.8 billion years old. If you're very generous, civilization is maybe 7,000 or 8,000 years old, if you count it from the first writing. If you assume any improvements at all, games will be indistinguishable from reality. or civilization will end. One of those two things will occur.
Where we are completely ingrained in some sort of an artificial technology or some sort of a symbiotic relationship with the internet or the next level of indistinguishable from regular reality. That this is real? When I touch that
Feels very real. Feels very real.
Yeah.
The simulation theory is that our reality isn't a reality at all, but actually we're in some sort of extremely advanced simulation. Your consciousness is software.
The fundamental premise is that there's a mysterious, super advanced civilization that runs computer programs to simulate all sorts of phenomena, including reality itself.
So the argument goes that we're almost certainly living in a simulated reality.
What if there is some advanced civilization that is far beyond where humans are? Then could they create a simulation that is something like what we consider reality?
What if you had an alien civilization that had been working on this for millions, if not billions of years?
Reality could get more and more advanced to the point where you can't tell it apart from the real world.
There are so many atoms in the universe, so many possible simulations, so many possible futures. Someplace on the earth, there could be angels and unicorns hiding.
You know, even if we just sort of existed as humans forever, we'd still eventually, that'd be like the heat death of the universe.
Right.
A zillion years from now. Eventually it's going to end.
Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey.
Doesn't sound like to me a good situation in which to take active steps toward contact. Scientists, including Stephen Hawking, have said the same thing. In a documentary released in 2010, Hawking pointed out that on Earth, the interactions between civilizations on different levels of technological advancement tend not to work out very well for the lesser advanced group. Everyone's making metaphysical assumptions. Everyone we're going to hear from tonight, all the guys at SETI, all the folks at the United Nations, World Economic Forum. Metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that examines the nature of reality. Why does anything exist? That's a metaphysical question. Who are we? Who made us? Why are we here? Where are we going? What does it all mean? Is there anything at all beyond this world? Our foundational absolute truths, our metaphysical assumptions as we start out tonight, there are only two options that any person has, and that is Christ or chaos. There's more evidence for belief in Jesus Christ than there is for believing that there's intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. And we mean, if we're going to define alien, we're talking about beings that are capable of making moral choices, that have intellect, emotion, and a will. That's what we mean by alien or extraterrestrial intelligence, just so we know what we're talking about. Because look, there are extraterrestrials, right? They're there. Angels and demons, those are otherworldly creatures. But this form of life that these groups are talking about, not a chance. They're not there. Specifically, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And what is the purpose of this world? We can answer that one for you right now. The purpose of this creation, the purpose of this universe, all of it, is for God's glory. This universe exists to provide a backdrop for redemptive history. That's objective truth. That's objective reality. And as we think about these issues tonight, we're going to have to define evil. We want to understand what evil is. From the Christian worldview, we have no problem defining evil. Evil is nothing. In other words, evil is no thing. That is to say that evil has no being. Evil is an action, which includes not only direct behaviors or deeds, but it includes thoughts and intentions. There is no substance known as evil. Now, there is a being that's known as good. That's the Creator God. But evil is the privation or the absence of good. So the only way that anyone could ever identify whether or not something is evil is when it's in the presence of good. And that is God. This is His universe. So when people say God can't exist, you can't have a God who claims to be all good if there's evil in the world. friend, the only way evil can exist is in these circumstances until God ends it. And that brings us to the question, what is sin? Sin is transgression of the law, God's will. And so sin is the active engagement of a moral agent in evil. A moral agent actively engaging in evil. So when we're thinking about extraterrestrials, they would have to be a type of being that could make a choice, a moral choice. It would have intellect and emotion and would be able to make a moral choice, would be able to actively engage in evil or not. There is no neutrality, so evil is simply any actions or thought or intentions that work against the will of God, who is truth and is good. So you run into a lot of people who are really nice, moral, upstanding people who are evil. Not in the sense that the world would define it, but there is no neutrality. He who is not with me is against me. Everyone is playing along with one of these, a social imaginary. The prevailing meta-narrative. If in the United States, the greatest number of people are willing to believe that extraterrestrial life forms are out there and they could be a threat, then the greatest number of members of our society are probably going to be willing to let the government make rules for that. And there are two basic positions when you're deciding, who am I in all of this universe? Mimesis sees the world with a given order, a telos, or a purpose. It has a given meaning, and that human beings conform themselves to the given design of creation. Men with women. We conform ourselves to the order that we see around us. The other perspective that we really see taking charge today is poiesis, or these people see the world as just raw material. That the individual can manipulate the world or even his own flesh, even his own body, to create his own purpose and meaning. People who are confused about what gender they are have no problem accepting extraterrestrial life forms, right? It's self-creation. Follow your heart, be true to yourself, you be you, all of this. It is possible for us to be completely deceived into believing that aliens are here without any evidence. John Elliott is the coordinator for the SETI Post-Detection Hub since the late 1990s. One of his specialties is determine what people are thinking and determine how you could make them think what you wanted them to think. That would be an outcome of his research.
Tell about his background.
Some of the funded projects that he's led out have included work with UK police and security agencies, including, guess who? MI5. If you don't know who MI5 is, that would be the UK version of the CIA. Specifically, what he did in that capacity was identifying certain behaviors. He said, we cannot afford to be ill-prepared for an event that could happen as early as tomorrow. He also said, we need to go beyond thinking about the impact on humanity, considering the human social response, and the time to do this is now. SETI, the Search for Extra-Terrestrial Intelligence, was founded in 1984 to explore the universe and find life on other planets. It runs a series of programs using radio and optical telescopes to search for signals from aliens. The work is reliant on computers to extract any artificial signals from the noise. The first SETI experiment was conducted around 50 years ago. There have been no signals detected that prove the existence of alien intelligence. One more time. In 50 years, there have been no signals detected that prove existence of alien intelligence. Seth Shostak, the senior astronomer at SETI, he said he was confident that if there is life out there, we will find it within 2 decades. He said that back in 2014. And you'll find that everyone involved with SETI says that. We're going to find it. We're going to find it. We're going to find it eventually. It's going to happen. They have no evidence, but we're going to find it one day. We really believe we are. Anyway, previous searches have covered a few thousand star systems at most, and it's likely that we would need to scour a few million before we would be successful. He said in an interview with Popular Mechanics, but advances in computer technology have sped up the search and will continue to do so, right? Look, our technology is getting so good. That's why we're going to find aliens. Right here, we're going to talk just a bit about Frank Drake. Before we do that, Summer, what do you think?
Well, I'm just thinking, they really want to have everybody sort of like on the edge of their seat. Are the aliens going to come? They keep seeding us. We know that SETI, the DoD, Department of Defense, they're working together in tandem to keep the eyes on the skies. And, well, is this not another effort at surveillance of the skies? Anybody that, might be doing something dubious that they don't like, they're going to shut that down.
The lovely Summer. Yeah, you know what? I hadn't thought of it that way, right? Mm-hmm. We are talking about radio telescopes, and we are talking about listening. That's why I'm very fortunate, because I have a wife that is always keeping an eye on things.
So I'm just thinking this is like a surveillance grid in the skies and in the space. Like obviously they're building it here for us on the ground, but okay, this is justifying having it everywhere. And I think it's even more obvious when we get into talking about the Artemis Accords, but I'll hold that for later.
I do want to get to this section here about Frank Drake, and he was wrong about some things that are very, very important.
Well, he was definitely he was right there with Carl Sagan, so he was this dreamer archetype that everybody could sort of latch onto.
Frank Drake was a radio astronomer known for his lifelong search for extraterrestrial life. He served as technical director with Carl Sagan in the creation of the Voyager Golden Record. The Golden Record is a recording of sounds and images portraying the diversity of life and culture on Earth, and it was placed aboard Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 spacecraft. So in 1961, Frank Drake came up with the Drake equation to roughly estimate the number, you see there on your screen, the N of advanced detectable civilizations likely to exist in the Milky Way, where R equals the rate of star formation in the Milky Way. F sub P equals the fraction of those stars with planetary systems. N sub E equals the average. Are you guys following? You got your notepads out? I'm going to do this.
Are we back in math class?
I'm going to do it. This is cool. This part of it's cool. So N sub E is the average number of planets in each planetary system that can potentially support life. F sub L is the fraction of suitable planets on which life actually appears, times F sub I, which is the fraction of planets with life which develop intelligent civilizations. F sub C is the fraction of these civilizations which develop technologies with signs that would be detectable in space, times L, which is the length of time such civilizations release detectable signals. Now, according to the Drake equation, there's a decent chance. You want to pin everything on a decent chance.
What do you think the chances are of, hit me with it. Just give it to me straight. What are my chances?
Not good.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100?
More like 1 out of...
Octillion. That is 1 followed by 27 zeros.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah!
A decent chance.
We have learned more, so much more about our universe that number, that there could be 50,000 civilizations. The truth is, folks, it is so improbable for life to exist in this universe that we shouldn't even be here. Frank Drake he established the organization that would become SETI, or the SETI Institute, in 1960, when Drake was a young astronomer at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory at Green Bank, West Virginia, where he turned the newly constructed Green Bank radio telescope towards Tau Ceti, a nearby star similar to our sun. Now pay attention here, folks. Here's what happened. Right? They were able to do it. They were able to point this dish, this receiver, at a star and listen to the signal that it put off. He reasoned that for the previous 40 years, Earth's increasingly powerful radar, radio, and television transmissions had formed an expanding shell of electromagnetic radiation spreading across space. If any aliens happen to be listening, the signals would alert them to the presence of intelligent life on our planet. Once again, if that's your worldview, why would you want to announce yourself? Anyway, so when they pointed the receiver toward Tau Ceti, they listened. He and his team listened to the noise of Tau Ceti for half an hour. And that noise was a persistent hiss. Then they went ahead and switched to another star, Epsilon Eridani. They were astonished and excited when they heard a series of irregular pulses. It's artificial. There's a pattern. It's clearly artificial. We've done it. On the second try, we found it. It's intelligent. Further research revealed that the signals were coming from a nearby military base. And since that time, nothing else has happened. Not a peep. Not a peep. Nothing. I want to share with you now what I think is going on here with this thinking. It's not just Frank Drake. It's everyone who is involved in this passionate push to find alien life, to create protocols for the Earth. Even the people, what was it called? Summer, the DART, where they blew up the asteroid recently.
Oh, yeah.
It was DART.
Mm-hmm. Mission Control erupted.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Awaiting visual confirmation.
All right. We got it? Waiting.
And we have impact.
At officially 4:17 p.m. our time, a NASA spacecraft slammed into a 525-foot asteroid known as Dimorphos, 7 million miles away at more than 14,000 miles per hour. The mission, called the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART, was launched in the name of planetary defense.
It's really a test to show that if something like this were coming at Earth, we could do something about it. And that's the overall goal of the planetary defense mission.
They're given to fantasy. Right. To think that you can keep the planet from being destroyed, you can't. You can't. Now, it's noble. It seems like a noble venture to try to.
God is in control of that, though.
Right.
Yeah, that's up to God. They're just sort of like pumping everybody up. Like, yeah, we can control if a asteroid comes, and we can find aliens, and we can go here and we can go there. So it's just pumping people up. It's false.
Right. This planet, it's only here now, and if it lasts for another 30 seconds, long ago and at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets, but in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things. Now pay attention to this, folks. This is a richly Trinitarian passage. He has spoken to us in these last days. He has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God, that is Christ, and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. Okay, look, this is where we are now. We'll do some literature for just a moment. In 1605 and 1615, Miguel de Cervantes wrote the two-part Spanish epic novel, El Ingenioso Hidalgo Don Quixote de la Mancha.
You're having too much fun.
Yeah, this is good. Or The Ingenious Gentleman, Don Quixote. This is often credited as the first modern novel, one of the greatest works ever written, also one of the most translated books in the world. But what are we talking about, right? This is not a literature show. Here's why this is important. Alonso reads so many romance stories that he becomes enraptured with fantasy to the point where he cannot reason to objective truth or objective reality anymore.
In other words, Don Quixote does not see the world for what it is. And he prefers to imagine that he's living out a knightly story that's meant for the annals of all time. He thinks of himself as an epic man of honor, unnecessarily constructing or imagining a reality that better suits the desires of his heart. The world is just raw material for me to create myself in, so that I can create my own existence. I can speak my reality into existence. Don Quixote was presumed for its central ethic, that in some ways individuals can be intelligent while their society is unreal. Right? It's the society that's crazy, not me. In the 19th century, the story was seen as a social commentary. Many critics came to view the work as a tragedy, and that's where we're focused here. Because Don Quixote's idealism is impulsive and it's impracticable. In other words, he's flighty. Reality was just too present. Reality's just too real, right? We're going to keep listening for those sounds because they're going to come someday, when you've got no evidence and no reason to ever even embark on that experiment. So from this masterpiece of literature, we get a word, quixotic. Quixotic means extravagantly chivalrous or romantic thinking, idealism, visionary, but in an impractical sense or impracticable. It also means impulsive and often rashly unpredictable. I would include Blavatsky, Bailey. I would include the Theosophists in this as well. The point here is that the search for alien life is a good example. Some of the most intelligent scientists in the world have boldly claimed that it is arrogant to assume that there are no other intelligent inhabitants in our universe. 10 years before Drake began his search for extraterrestrial life, physicist Enrico Fermi famously asked, "Where the hell is everybody? Why are you looking?" That's a good question. Why are you looking out there? So despite continued efforts to detect intelligent signals from outer space by pointing radio telescopes of increasing power at thousands of stars and across millions of different radio frequencies, SETI scientists have continued to draw a blank. The only signal that they ever got that was even close, was actually artificial, was from a military base a few miles away. Not a single signal has ever been picked up to suggest that somewhere out there there's any other life form. Drake said to the Royal Society at a meeting in 2010, he said, quote, "I don't think the silence is eerie. It's predictable. We would expect the silence, right? Because we really know there's nothing out there. We just hope." Anyway, sorry, that's not the quote. The quote is, "There may be up to 10,000 civilizations in the galaxy, but given that the galaxy also contains 100 billion stars, that means we will have to search around 10 million stars before we have a realistic chance of finding one." Couldn't you find something better to do? Like mow the yard? I'm sure the fence needs painting. Something is better than this. He said this, though, and this is what you'll always hear, "But we will make contact one day." Tilting at windmills, that's what they're doing. And that's what the story of Quixote, that's really what he was doing. You see him there, taking on the windmill. He believed they were dragons. And his sidekick, his squire, Sancho Panza, he went along with the delusion. Yes, sir, these are dragons. Let's fight them. And that's what we see happening in our research universities quite a lot. When you have a man like Drake, who's got ambition and he's got pull, he's got some power, and people want his position or they want to be on his coattails, they'll believe in these things.
We know that Ecclesiastes 3:11, right? God placed eternity in our hearts. So we all have that feeling that we're part of something greater and we're going to something greater and there's something greater going on. But if people don't have God's word then it's easy to misplace that, to be misdirected.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Let's do that. Let's look at Ecclesiastes 3 for just a moment. That's excellent. That's my wife there, folks. That's good. That's why we're doing this show this way now, so the show can be good.
It's always been good.
Starting at verse 9, though, it says, "What gain has the worker from his toil? I've seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end." What does that mean?
We can't know.
Faith is in Christ. It is in the finished work of Christ. That's where the truth is. That's where it starts. Now, there's nothing wrong inherently with researching and trying to understand what's going on in the universe. But a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ and a regenerated heart, eyes to see, where we can understand Scripture, we can pray that the Holy Spirit would guide us as we read and study the Word. You come to understand clearly it's just foolish to be taking on such endeavors. But what Summer's saying here is so important, because what we see here in Frank Drake is made in the image of God. That's why he cares. Now, he's confused, as many of these folks are, about what to do with that sense of eternity that's on his heart. He feels like that there's more to existence than what we can see.
And I would even argue that he might be a true believer in that, but he could also just be like part of the con. You know, he could just be wearing that archetype.
Yeah, this is where Summer and I balance each other well. I'll always be taking the perspective that these people are true believers, and most of the time I'm wrong. She's right. Most of the time they're involved in the con somehow. Right.
It's just a good balance that we have, I guess. Right?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Well, we do know that the powers that be put certain personalities out there for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, culture shapers.
You know, the reason Summer's on point with this is because what has the search for extraterrestrial intelligence actually done for society?
Well, it's also gotten people really involved in the occult, right?
It's done damage.
And looking to the spirit world, they want to make contact. So we know that those are demons, right? So it's like people are initiating contact with demons, thinking that they're initiating contact with aliens, and that's terrible. That's horrible.
And plus, you think about the space race. Here you go. Here's a little fun for you, folks.
Well, speaking of bombs, what is it that makes America the world's greatest nuclear power? And what is it that will make it possible for us to spend $20,000 million of our taxpayers' money to put some idiot on the moon? Well, it was the great, enormous superiority of American technology, of course, as provided by our great American scientists, such as Dr. Werner von Braun. Gather round while I sing you of Werner von Braun, a man whose allegiance is ruled by expedience. Call him a Nazi, he won't even frown. Nazi schmazi, says Werner von Braun. Don't say that he's hypocritical, say rather that he's apolitical. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Werner von Braun. Some have harsh words for this man of renown, but some think our attitude should be one of gratitude, like the widows and cripples in old London town, who owe their large pensions to Werner von Braun. You too may be a big hero once you've learned to count backwards to zero. in German oder English. I know how to count down. Und I'm learning Chinese, says Werner von Braun.
Okay, all right. That's enough of that. Yes, wow, that's a lot of applause. Okay, all right. NASA recently launched an 8-month inquiry to investigate hundreds of these, what they're calling now, UAP. Although investigators concluded that there was no evidence the objects had come from outer space or a foreign adversary, they said that most could not be explained. And so the point here with all this is they're going to tell you that the protocols need updating. We need new rules. Currently, the only existing agreed contact protocols for encountering alien life were drawn up by SETI itself in 1989, and they have not been revised since 2010. But they focus entirely on scientific conduct. The Royal Society had a scientific discussion meeting on the detection of extraterrestrial life and the consequences for society and science in 2010, but there has been no global agreement on how to handle contact. Learning how to decipher an alien language or method of communication is likely to be one of the major hurdles that experts will need to consider. In a recent BBC documentary called First Contact, you're going to see the trailer, some clips from that in our video we're about to play for you. The BBC documentary called First Contact, an Alien Encounter. Scientists admitted it may never be possible to understand what aliens are trying to tell us. So this is another problem with the extraterrestrial hypothesis, is that why would you assume that you could communicate with them? If that's your worldview, why would you think that a civilization sufficiently advanced, to be 1,000 years ahead of us or 1,000,000 years, why don't they communicate telepathically? Why don't they communicate using who knows what? Why is it radio waves? Well, it's all we have. Humans are still searching for signs of intelligent alien life on other planets, but how would we react if we ever did make contact? According to many of our cultural touchstones, there's only one thing for it if extraterrestrials ever take a cosmic detour to our planet. And that would be heavy artillery fire. Typically, that's the idea. That would be the response. But from the sugary 1980s blockbuster E.T., the Extraterrestrial, and the decades of Star Trek episodes to the books of Isaac Asimov and Ursula K. Le Guin, science fiction writers have long wrangled with the question, how would we really treat aliens? In popular culture, extraterrestrials are often cast as second-class citizens. Now pay attention to this. Listen to where this narrative goes when we're talking about governance. Extraterrestrials are often cast as second-class citizens or less than human. If it weren't for the intervention of E.T.'s human friend, the titular alien would have been cut open and on an operating room table. In the 2009 film District 9, millions of alien prawns are packed into South African slums. An allegory for human bigotry and cruelty in real life. So you see, social justice is the order of the day. Social justice for extraterrestrials as well. Any way that you can find to classify yourself or someone else as a minority.
This reminds me of my headmaster who was a true believer, and she had a PhD in echeistics. I spoke about this on Matrix Override, and that's the study of all the ologies, psychology, sociology, anthropology, group dynamics, how human settlements get along, right? Because this group is supposed to, when you read about what is this group going to do, it's how to decipher methods, enact space law, and anticipate societal impacts. So she actually told me at one point that, these meetings that she would go to once a year where she would meet with other scientists around the world, she said to me that they would sit there and brainstorm how to react if the aliens come. So this was when I was in high school. She was a true believer. It's been in the works for quite a long time, and this is real, and there are think tanks that sit around and talk about this, and they believe that they're involved in something incredible. You know, they're not necessarily aware of the fact of all the deception around it, so... Progressive high school. Very progressive.
What do you mean by progressive?
Well, first off, the school could only have a certain amount of people in it. It was 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. 75 people allowed max. That was done by design. The reason for that cap was never revealed, but it was revealed that it was done for a purpose, a very important purpose, and it was based on group dynamics and social dynamics. Student body would be responsible for governing itself. See something, say something, leading in that direction. You know, the student body would police itself, and people really would call each other out. We'd have Monday morning meetings, and sometimes those meetings would go for hours, just however long it would take. If somebody was called out for something, and the rest of the student body would just demand justice.
What's wrong with group dynamics if that's how it works?
Well, for a small environment such as this, 75 people in a high school, honestly, it was, for me, I enjoyed it. I felt that it kind of put me on track to follow the rules, I suppose. There weren't rows of seats. It was, the students were against the wall. So it was just like the students were in a circle, essentially. So it was this idea of equality. Everybody got equal attention in a sense. Nobody's in front, nobody's behind. And the whole thought behind that was, just that nobody could hide from the teacher as well. With the way that this school was, it wanted to bring out your individuality. For example, I was actually super interested in UFOs and aliens and the Illuminati, Freemasonry. So I was actually encouraged, like, you're interested in that? Okay, you can write your term paper on it. So I started writing all of my term papers on these subjects. And then if you really got into something that you were interested in, everybody was pretty stoked about that. The teachers really encouraged that. That model, could be quite beneficial for just bringing out the potential in somebody. One thing that was quite revealing about the whole thing, this is the interesting part about it. At the time you're thinking, this is a place where I'm actually being celebrated, I can excel. Because of my interests in what I was writing about, what was interesting is I got to know on a deeper level the headmaster of the school, or the director of the school. And her background was, she was a freedom rider. She was part of the Black Panther movement. She wasn't African American. She was a white woman. She was heavily involved in this in the 60s. So she was a bit of a rebel herself. And one of the things that she had us do, some of the students, was to order our file from the government. She's like, order this file, send it here, and then I guarantee you when the file comes back, most of the information will be blacked out. So a few of us did that, and it came back, and sure enough, most of the file was blacked out. And it was quite interesting, and even interesting that, she was just instilling that sort of rebellion within us to sort of ask questions. So after noticing that I had this interest in aliens and the Illuminati and Freemasonry and uncovering all of this, she called me into her office one day, and she's asking me, why I was interested in this. And I said, I don't know, I just really feel like there's something to it. And she said, well, I have a PhD in echystics. It's basically the study of all the ologies: psychology, anthropology, sociology. It's the study of the ability of humans to cooperate with one another, how to improve communication between humans. And so she's like, I would go to this one area of the world every year and meet with all the top scientists to discuss how to improve relations. And then she said, for when the aliens come, we're trying to actually figure out how to improve cooperation and communications for when the aliens come. And that was really, obviously, as a 16-year-old, I was really blown away by that, and also the fact that she brought me into her office privately and sort of disclosed this to me, literally like she was confiding in me. This is not, she's like, can I just tell you something? And from then on out, I was quite close with her, and she really took me under her wing and taught me a lot. I can see now that she was deceived, that she was a part of this program and this programming and this agenda and raising it up at the grassroots level, at the local level. And this is back in the mid-90s. And what's so creepy about it is to see that when you look around, it is all about everyone's starting to tell on one another. It is bringing about this culture of the hive mind, group dynamics, social dynamics, the student body govern itself. And there's something very appealing about that, because you're told, well, you take responsibility for your own actions. And there's something very appealing about that. It gives it a moral high ground in a sense. But what they're really doing is training you to fall in line with group think. Yeah, the social justice piece was part of it as well. Part of going to school there and being in the high school is each student had to be a part of writing skits, then acting them out for a play that was put on each year. It was called I Too Am America on social justice issues, which again, at face value, seems like a really great thing, because it's expressing tolerance for people that, interracial couples, gay couples, this kind of thing. It really makes you feel that you're evolving the society, doing something that is for the greater good, this inclusivity idea, the social justice issue. What it does is it ultimately undermines family. It undermines and just ignores the union between a man and a woman. And I guess some could argue that that was already implicit in the culture and maybe it had been beaten into the ground and these other voices that were marginalized were being called to be brought in the front. But that definitely was the message. I believe that it was actually a strong message to get people to start not believing in the family, not wanting to necessarily have a family. Yeah, you're sort of like groomed to be this. Honestly, it's the narcissism that you see that's slowly blossomed as an epidemic around the world, because you're just like, let me feed myself. It's the whole soul searching the self thing, and it's really celebrated. And yeah, so it's a good thing to want to bring out the voices of people who were traditionally marginalized, but it's just very clever way of just playing on people's traumas.
So what does the Bible say about these aliens? Well, the earth and mankind are unique in God's creation. Genesis 1 teaches that God created the earth before he even created the sun, the moon, or the stars. Acts 17 states that the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples that are built by hands. He made every nation of men that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he determined the times set for them and the exact places where they should live and where they should die. What we're telling you here is there are no aliens. There are no moral beings out there. This leaves us with an unsolvable paradox, unless, of course, there are no moral beings outside the earth. What about non-moral and non-sentient life forms on other planets? Could algae or even dogs and cats be present on an unknown planet? Maybe. And it would not do any real harm to the biblical text. We've said that before. If aliens did exist, it doesn't change our faith at all. But it would certainly prove problematic when trying to answer questions like, since all of creation suffers, what purpose would God have in creating non-moral and non-sentient creatures to suffer on distant planets? God is not arbitrary. He's a perfect, maximally great and perfect being. All of his decisions are perfect. They're not arbitrary. Aliens would be an arbitrary creation, is the point. And the Bible gives us no reason to believe that there is life elsewhere in the universe. In fact, the Bible gives us several key reasons why there cannot be. There are many strange and unexplainable things that take place, but there is no reason to attribute these phenomena to aliens or UFOs. If there is a discernible cause to these supposed events, it is likely to be spiritual, and more specifically, demonic. So we hope that you've enjoyed this presentation here tonight. And I'd like to thank my lovely wife Summer for being patient with me this week in this work. And I just want to express how much I appreciate your hard work and your partnership in this work. And
It's an honor. It's an honor. We are so blessed to have the truth and these people out there that are participating in the enslavement of humanity. Pray for these people. Pray for them. It's just really a sobering thing to think that there's so many people out there that are really bought into this philosophy, this worldview that the world's headed toward right now.
Thank you, my friends, for being with us.
So have a great night, you guys.
God bless you.
God bless you.
This is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net. But it's just a very clever way of just playing on people's traumas. Playing on people's traumas. For when the aliens come. The student body would just demand justice. UFOs. Aliens. The Illuminati, Freemasonry. And meet with all the top scientists to discuss how to improve relations for when the aliens come. Improve relations for when the aliens come. This war was ultimately a spiritual battle. The question we all need to ask ourselves is your soul for sale? Armor of Truth.